Good afternoon, Camille. How are you today?
Good afternoon, John. I'm great. I'm great. And you? How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Absolutely fantastic. And it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on our CTO News Thursday vlog series. We look forward to learning more about you, Expo Bank, and everything that you're doing within the crypto space. So to begin with, please could you introduce yourself?
Sure. And thank you for having me. My name is Kamil Jublinski. I work currently as a CTO of Zappo Bank. Going to speak about Zappo Bank probably in a bit, but to give a brief introduction, it is a first licensed Bitcoin bank, or Bitcoin first bank, how we like to say. And it's really a blend of modern technologies like crypto with the traditional banking, with the benefits that that world also brings. Myself, I have 18 years of experience in IT right now, and I started as a backend engineer. Then I moved to data world, big data back then. Now nobody really calls it like that. Now it's just data, even though we talk about very often in different companies tera or petabytes that we are processing. But anyway, I was exploring that field quite early, where it was actually pretty young, and you didn't have these nice products in the cloud like we do now to do that for you. So you actually had to work with open source technologies on premise setup. So I did that for a few years, and then uh, more or less after 7 years of engineering time, I moved into leadership. So I was first a technical lead for a while, for a couple of years. Then I moved into upper management, started as the director of engineering in my previous company. And then I moved to Zap also as director of engineering, and then later I became a CTO. Yeah, so that's the short description of my journey.
Absolutely, that's fantastic, and thank you for sharing. And I think, to begin with, as my first question would be, can you share how your hands-on experience during university prepared you for your role as DTO?
I really strongly believe that, especially in technology, every leader should still remain hands-on, and of course that really depends on the size of the company, right? Because if you are a CTO of Google, maybe it's a bit tougher to remain hands-on, but then there are different expectations. But I usually aim into smaller size companies, startups or scale-ups. And I feel there it's actually very important to be able to understand what you're discussing with your engineers, with your technical leads. You really need to come from this background to really have good discussions, good challenges, to really make sure that you're driving your roadmap in the right direction, but at the same time you actually understand the certain roadblocks or certain challenges that engineers face. Because if you never did that yourself, it's actually very hard. You can become an aloof manager, which is nothing I would ever want for myself, or I personally wouldn't also like to work with a leader like that if I was an engineer still. So I feel that university experience, but then also years in being an engineer myself, prepared me well to actually be able to still remain pragmatic, to still remain hands-on, even when moving into upper management. Yeah.
Brilliant, fantastic. Can you share what programming languages you started out on, during your early sort of career days in terms of coding languages, and how has your technology stack sort of evolved over the years?
Mm. So when I was before university, I would play with certain languages. That was very early days, so there would be things like Basic or yeah, there are a few others. One I actually don't even remember the name of the second one that I was playing with them very early. But then when I moved into university, we would be exposed to different languages, C, C sharp, Visual Basic, even COBOL. I actually had COBOL, which is really a dinosaur right now. But when I actually learned Java during university, this is something that I then was using commercially in my career. So when I finished my university and I went to work for a company, that was Java back then. So and then years went by and I was still working primarily in Java, but I did work with other languages, especially on Java virtual machines. So I work with Scala. I was exposed to Kotlin. Of course, I touched things like Python or Node.js when I had to, or even some front-end engineering type of work. Whenever there was a need, I would use other languages. But my core was always Java and everything surrounding that. So I was just deepening that knowledge. So I was learning different frameworks, of course, Spring, Hibernate, everything that you kind of need to be developing. But then I actually moved more into when I moved into big data world, I started working with NoSQL databases, trying to understand that, starting to understand microservices architecture, but then also making sure that I'm building different systems that are very scalable. So you actually face completely different challenges. You need to make sure that you process things fast, you process reliably. You need to learn how to use certain storages and queues the right thing for the right job, Kafka for this, HBase back then for this, or right now BigQuery for a warehouse, key value store for something else. So I feel like you don't always have to learn many languages. You can actually stick to certain languages but then deepen your knowledge. So really in that T-shape you're really down on that vertical thing, while actually touching a bit of other things on a more shallow basis, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Brilliant. Okay, can you talk about your transition from a data and engineering individual where you focus on writing transformation pipelines and designing data warehouses to a broader role in software development and leadership?
Mm. Yeah, the transition was quite smooth, to be honest, because I had before I even was working as a, or not before, but actually during my time as a data engineer, I had some opportunities where I would lead a team, so I was already exposed a bit to being a technical lead, but that was temporary, mainly because of you need to have a position open basically in a company that you work with, so you can be ready, but if there is no spot, you either switch a company or wait for that spot to open. And there was a time where my back then leader wanted to move on to no, he was actually promoted to a higher role, and I was the right person for that job back then. So I was kind of like his second, and we together decided that I'm happy to take on the leadership role. So from the data engineering, coding every day, testing, coding, designing architecture, I moved on into becoming the technical lead of the same project back then. So it was still in that data engineering domain, but we had a team of 11 people spread across 2 countries back then. So it was Germany and Poland, and that was where I was actually exposed more towards that, and I was able to gain more experience in this field. And I always wanted that. I felt like I always had interest in psychology, actually, from the early days. It was something that I was even considering if I should go study that, but then I felt like it's not something I actually really want to do professionally. It was always more of a hobby and something that supports what I'm doing right now. So I felt like this is going to be my path. Eventually, I want to move into management while still being hands-on. And So that was the start, and then I moved on to a different company, and it was actually an interesting story because back then I moved not as a technical lead, but I moved to a different company as a senior engineer. So I was like, yeah, okay, there was a friend told me that I worked with before. He told me there's an opening and it's a nice company, and I went for that. But then within 6 months, they promoted me to a technical lead. So I was kind of laughing, like I almost cannot run from it, this. This is what happened. So, and then after a few years, I actually went one layer higher into being a head of, or director, and this is also how I moved to Zapo. So it felt like, yeah, it evolved quite naturally, but for me it was always, I was always doing that next step before I was promoted, right? And this is also how I approach promotions. I never expected, okay, promote me first, and I'm gonna be doing this new type of work. No, I was already, like, doing a bit from that role, and then to show, okay, I'm actually ready for that, and then the promotion would happen quite naturally. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, I can see that. So, how do you create an environment at Expo Bank to empower VPs and teams to work independently while still maintaining sort of alignment with the company's overall objectives?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because I feel that that is quite difficult, right? It's a good challenge to have. I feel like on one hand you want to provide autonomy and empower your leads, empower your teams to be able to, think about initiatives bottom up, and really propose what needs to be improved, while you need to steer them in a way that this is not completely disconnect from where the company goes. So on one hand, I always work with my leaders, and I also ask them to cascade this message down. I always say, like, better ask me for forgiveness than for permission. And I want them to learn when they fail. Of course, I always try to set up an environment where they can fail safe, right? So that there is no, like, a disaster because they failed. And usually you can do that with certain guardrails. But at the same time, I provide this kind of direction through different frameworks. So one of such frameworks is a very popular one. I am a fan of OKRs. I feel like this really helps to drive the teams in the right direction. And on one hand, we like to set up more high-level objectives that are, let's say, for 12 months. But then I feel I really like to work on a quarterly basis and have more tangible targets, like, what do we want to achieve during next quarter, right? And we then are able to prioritize more ruthlessly. So you could say, for example, okay, you have 5 or 6 high level objectives for the year, but you can see that you actually can only fit work from 3 of them to really focus in the quarter, right? So we then go and set up targets for those 3 or 4. Usually it's actually 4, and make sure that the teams then, when they work on their roadmap, on their quarterly planning, their initiatives align to that they are not disconnected. And of course, there is a bit of freedom. Not everything can be aligned, so we accept that as well. It's not that everything goes top to bottom, but there needs to be a certain alignment. Because, for example, if I would then see the roadmap and I see 80% initiatives not having anything to do with the OKRs we agreed on, then there is something wrong with the prioritization, right? So that's one thing, and we really provide certain budget, technical budget to our teams, because of course they need to work on the product as well. So there is a product budget. Usually the split at the moment is 70-30, but 70% product, 30% technical budget, and we have full autonomy over technical budget. But sometimes there are situations, actually at Zapo we are approaching this situation now, that we actually were focusing a lot on product in the past 2.5 years, and now we probably need to invest a bit more than 30% into improving some certain technical things, and we are actually working on a technical gap assessment as we speak, really. And there are going to be some workshops. We're going to meet in Gibraltar soon. And so, yeah, this might then be a conversation between me and the chief product officer, like, okay, maybe we need to switch the ratio for a while, and yeah. So this is
Yeah,
how I'm trying to guide
brilliant.
this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. And it's just great to see and understand a bit more about, the directions that you're heading towards and how, OKRs and just the strategy that you've laid out, the roadmap you've laid out will, in essence, get you to the end result that you've just articulated. So thank you for sharing. So what impact does regulatory requirements have on Expo Bank and the broader Bitcoin sector? And can you just share a bit more about Expo Bank in terms of where it positions itself within that sort of Bitcoin traditional banking sort of sector?
Mhm. So we're really trying to position ourselves as something very innovative, because as you know for sure that there are not many. I mean, I don't know about any regulated bank other than Xapo that is really Bitcoin first. This is still quite difficult to receive a bank license and then merge it with crypto. Usually it's either one or the other. There is plenty of products right now in the crypto space that are doing great things, but this is not connected in any way to traditional finance, right? So it's at the moment either one or the other.
Mhm.
We are trying to create this blend because we do feel that there is good in both worlds. It's not that one is all bad or one was only great. We really feel that, people when people think, or at least when you think about mass adoption, so usually people that are not experts in tech space, they think about bank as something safe to keep your wealth and protect your
Mhm.
wealth. And we really try to use that. At the same time, there is a great utility coming from banks. We all use banks every day. We have cars, we have banking apps. So even though crypto world provides a lot of cutting edge technology, at the moment I feel like the mass adoption is only starting to become real because the products still need to be easier to use, they need to be simpler, they need to provide more utility. Because if, for example, you can keep your Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies safe when using a hardware wallet, but if you actually want to, for example, pay with that Bitcoin on hardware wallet, that's actually quite difficult to do. If you want to have interest on that Bitcoin and hardware wallet, again, you need to deploy it somewhere. It's not so user friendly, and you need to be quite cautious to not have your keys being compromised, because you might lose all your money. Like I said that in some other podcast, but the data point is speaks for itself. There was already $484 billion lost in Bitcoin, because hardware keys were lost or something happened and they were compromised. So it's a real thing, right? It's a real problem to solve. And people know that keeping money on exchanges is also not the way to go. We've seen exchanges collapse. We've seen FTX. We've seen many other smaller players. Are they being hacked or having other problems? And we are trying to position ourselves somewhere in between. Like, on one hand, we are not an exchange. So, if you want to do daily trading and all of that, you should go to an exchange. But when you made your profit, you want to pull it out, right? So if you don't want to then keep it on your hardware because you still want to be able to use your Bitcoin, make sure you earn money on your Bitcoin, yeah, then Zappa is a great place to keep it. And then you also asked about regulatory thing. It's still a challenging situation, because you can see that this is, I think, people in charge, let's call it like that, understood a while ago that Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is not going anywhere. So this means actually they need to catch up with the regulatory, with different laws and regulatory requirements. So at the moment, US, at least till now, where they were not very supportive. We know about few banks that went bust because they were involved into too heavily in the crypto world. And even though I feel like the future is going to that direction, it's still quite challenging. And we as Zappo, because we are touching that crypto world, sometimes it is difficult for us to find partners with to provide certain features. We need to actually go through much more hoops than you would normally have to do if you were not touching the crypto world, because yeah, because of those regularity challenges. So yeah, but this is still, I feel it's worth it, and we've been quite good in maintaining the quality for our users, and yeah, I think it's still going in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the difference between a hardware wallet and a digital wallet in relation to MPC? So that's multi-party computation protocol versus multi-signature protocol.
Mm. Yeah, so hardware wallet is the wallet that is a physical device. So for example, Ledger, this is one example. Digital wallet or software wallet, this is something that you can set up on your computer without needing a physical device. Underneath, they both keep in the end store your data on the blockchain, depending which blockchain you're using, Bitcoin, Ethereum. So for example, MetaMask is an example of software wallet. When it comes to MPC versus multi-signature setup, this is how you protect signing of your Bitcoin transactions. So you wanna because you don't even need any of the two really to be able to sign your transactions. If you're using a ledger, you just have one signer, right? Your device is signing your transactions, and you just need to provide your PIN. When you, let's say, want to withdraw your Bitcoin, you provide your PIN, you sign the transaction, and off it goes to a destination address. But when you're working in corporate environment or you're building some products, you want this to be more safe. You don't want to have a single point of failure that, let's say, one of your employees decides to withdraw all your money and run from it. You need to make sure that this is set up in a way where there are multiple people that need to sign a transaction so that the transactions can go off. And I used this in the past. I used this meta analogy in the past. I think it's a good one. So the way you can think about multi-sig versus MPCs, if you would imagine a safe where where in case of multi-signature you require, let's say that safe has 5 keys, and so it requires, but it only requires 3 of those 5 keys to open that safe, any of the 3. So let's say there are 5 people, they have 5 keys, but you only require 3 of them to come together at any given point if you want to open that safe. And the thing with multisig is that at the point where you want to open that safe, those private keys actually need to come together. So let's say there is another person where those 3 people for a moment give their key, and that person, looks at the keys and opens the safe, right, or the vault. And the challenge with that is that in that moment of opening, that those keys are actually not exposed, but they can be compromised, because there is a moment where those keys are actually visible or coming together. In MPC, this is solved in a very different way. You can imagine also having a safe, but that safe is actually done in a way where there is only one private key, and that private key is divided into 3 pieces, into 3 shards, and 3 people have, each of them has 1 shard, right? So 1 piece of the key. And the MPC technology, the magic about that is that whenever you need to open the safe, so sign the transaction, it's done in a way where that private key never really comes together. It's just done in a way where each of that person is only able to provide the input that their piece is actually valid, and the protocol, MPC protocol, makes it so that it's able to sign the transaction, but that key never really comes together, which means it can never be compromised. So in terms how it's done at Zappo is very interesting, because we use MPC, which we feel is really a future of this. So this is a direction that probably other companies will start going. And for us, it's like each of those three pieces is held in a different geolocation. So they are geographically spread and they rotate every 60 seconds.
Oh,
So
okay.
that means that if you would want to hack us, you would actually have to get your hands on each three pieces, which are stored in different locations within 60 seconds. So all of them would have to be compromised within 60 seconds. So you can imagine it's practically impossible to do. And then on top of that, the pieces are held like in bunkers. We've been actually showing one of those locations to a journalist a while ago, and it's really a military bunker, like a military nuclear bunker with arm with. It's actually quite impressive, Mission Impossible like setup. So, yeah, very hard to hack us, with other words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I can, that is, that's what's required for the vast amounts that's been, said to be at stake if anything was to go untoward. So yeah, like, I just really appreciate the gravity of having sort of an underground bunker. Brilliant. So you've read the book Team Typologies, and I was wondering how has that influenced the way you structure and manage your teams, particularly around the focus on domain-driven design?
Mm. Yeah, it's an excellent book. It inspired me a lot, and the way our teams are set up is actually definitely reflecting how it was proposed. Plus, then there are on top of that some additional tweaks that I felt were merging some gaps that we had if we were just relying on that. So I actually wrote an article on that, just explaining it at depth. I welcome everybody to read it. It's on our Zappo Labs blog. But to describe it in a shorter way is the team topologies, they speak about different types of teams that you have. So there are like product teams, which they call stream aligned teams. Those are the teams that just, work with the stream that is coming from the business that needs to be tackled. That's why it's usually product teams. But then you have some supporting teams that provide certain possibilities, certain functionalities or infrastructure that will then allow those core teams work faster. So you can have enabling teams. Those are teams like, for example, for us, it's security. Such team is an enabling team. They don't really own things themselves. They can own some stuff, but they are more like enablers. So they come to different teams and make sure they can help them, but they can leave them in a place so that they, after that, can handle further requests of the same type themselves, right? Then
Mhm.
you have platform teams that kind of almost create internal product. So one such team at Zappo is a platform engineering team. So it's making sure that infrastructure is handled by them, and they also expose certain abstractions on top of infrastructure so that our engineers don't have to do that work themselves and they can actually utilize and deliver faster. So yeah, we made sure that those teams are aligned like that, and how we build the teams and how did we decide how many teams should we have was actually based on domain-driven design. So this is where we actually merged on one hand DDD and on the other hand team topologies, because I feel that domain-driven design is excellent about making sure that your architecture is autonomous. It provides autonomy for the teams, and the teams are then set up in a way where they can own things, and then they can work with product owners on those domains. So we have multiple of such domains as a bank. You can imagine domains being things like compliance or assets under management, or things related to money in, money out. So those are kind of domains that we are tackling. And then there is a bit of a twist there. We created an abstraction layer, or something that brings a couple of those SATs of those teams together to then make sure that there is a bridge to business requirements. So that's not really mentioned in the team topology boost. This is something that I felt was needed. And this is a notion of tribes. And some companies use tribes, maybe in a slightly different way. But so you can imagine that, let's say we have 2 or 3 teams that correspond to one business KPI. Let's say asset under management is such KPI, because as Zappo, this is our business model. The more money we have, the more we can invest, the more profit we make. And we share that profit with the users in form of interest rate. So with that being said, you can imagine that there are certain domains that fall under that thing, and then it makes sense to create a way to connect multiple teams to make sure their priorities are aligned. If needed, they help each other out, but still, each of that teams still has a certain amount of autonomy. So this is how it is set up based on this.
Amazing, amazing, absolutely fantastic, and thank you for sharing. I think you know it creates those high performing teams from those types of top topologies. So it's great to understand how you sort of designed your teams at Nextway Bank. Great, thank you, Camille. So, how do you manage complexities of running microservices across AWS and GCP, especially with data being in GCP while other services are in AWS?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for us, the core, so where the backend and architecture of all supporting our product, it's in AWS. So you could say that main infrastructure part is there. So to answer that question first, microservices is a great pattern. I think it's architectural pattern if it's not misused, because there are no silver bullet solution. Sometimes it actually makes more sense to have a monolith or even modular monolith, depending on the size of the company. But with our size and with our needs at the moment, it provides a lot of benefits. So for us, it actually makes sense to use microservices, and it allows different teams to work autonomously. So I was speaking about that in previous question. You want to make sure there is different layers of autonomy. Autonomy of to provide features on your own, but then autonomy also to make sure you're able to deploy on your own, or you're able to monitor the production environment on your own, and you have your own set of errors and things like that. So that this setup helps with that. But what you really want to make sure that this is done in a correct way. So make sure that the bounded contexts are very healthy. And this is actually where the domain-driven design comes. So this is why we structure the teams around certain domains, and we are making sure that their services and their architecture reflects that. We're dealing with, with legacy, of course, because Zappo has been around 11 years, and there are things done in a different way. There were things done in a different way initially. So there is always a bit of cleaning that needs to happen. But overall, I think we are in a good spot. There is still a lot of work, but I'm glad that the teams really buy into the idea of using DDD, which I think always cultural shift is the most difficult in my opinion. But we invested quite a lot in the beginning into different workshops about DDD, and really spending times with the teams to make sure that new features are being built in this way, and that everybody understand what kind of even subdomains or bounded contexts exist within Zappo. And then this way it sets those teams up for success, because they are thinking in this way whenever they build something new, or whenever they want to refactor something existing. And then to connect that with GCP, with our data platform being in Google, I do feel that Google, when it comes to data, has much more superior products comparing to AWS. Just BigQuery, I don't feel that product has any competitors still. There are some alternative solutions like Redshift, but they never they are not as strong. I think Google really is still at cutting edge when it comes to working with data warehouses in a managed way. So that's why we decided to use BigQuery as our main data warehouse storage, and then we use that environment with everything that is needed to make sure we ingest data from AWS into BigQuery, and then we visualize it in Looker, making sure that the internal teams that use that data as a product, that they are able to use it in a way where they can self-serve. So if you set it up in the right way, you don't need a member of the data team for every little request. No, you actually are able to empower people that are a bit less technical, people that don't know SQL and they cannot go directly to BigQuery to make their own queries. No, you do it in a visualization tool with proper guardrails, so that whenever someone is using underlying data, they fully understand what they are using, and the insights they are getting are actually accurate, because it's actually quite dangerous if a business is making wrong assumptions, because you can make wrong, bad decisions. And if you want to be a data-driven company, this is actually what you're after. You want to make good decisions based on the insights you get from the data. So it's actually quite important you get this right. But it works, it works. So of course, when you have two environments, you have some additional costs when it comes to sending data back and forth. I mean, this is inevitable. But other than that, you can do it in a good way architecturally. So yeah, works for us.
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, one of the operative words that you used was guardrails. And I think guardrails are absolutely crucial when exposing, sort of environments in AWS or GCP. And especially when you've understood that, it's okay to possibly fail, but, it's failing within a sort of, the guardrails that you've outposted, that you've assigned to that particular project or environment. And I think that's really crucial because it gives the teams the ability to um to basically to empower them, but not necessarily empowering them to the detriment of a particular pipeline project or workload. There are those parameters that are actually being set. Excellent.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So my final question is, Camille, can you discuss the challenges and benefits of using Cassandra and MongoDB in your infrastructure and how you balance these with your IaaS console and Terraform for infrastructure management?
Um, so, I feel like you really need to use right tool for the job. And despite us, in majority of our services, we are okay with using relational databases hosted on AWS, like using RDS. There are a few features where it actually makes sense to go for NoSQL. So Cassandra is actually used at the heart. Of our architecture. We really store critical data there. And then MongoDB as well. Sometimes it makes sense to use a document DB. You have more freedom in terms of storing. So people like to say schema less, which I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I think there is no schema less. There is just either schema on write or schema on read, right? So
Mhm.
in terms of MongoDB, you have schema on read because you somehow need to figure out what you're reading. So the schema just lives in your code basically. So it's seamless because we're using microservices, right? So because you're using this architecture, different services are allowed to use the underlying technology. It can be either, like here we are talking about different storages or storage types, but the same freedom can also happen on the language level. So, we have some services that are in Python, we have services in Node.js, we even have services in Java, recently added. That's actually not such a big challenge to blend those different technologies. Infrastructure as a code, this is for me crucial, because any infrastructure that you set up really needs to be able to be easily set up in a different place. So especially for disaster recovery scenarios, but then also even maintaining the evolution of that code or changes and allowing other people to contribute. So there I've been to a conference and there was a guy speaking about, I really like that. He said that we should never have ClickOps. And by ClickOps, he meant, going to AWS console and just clicking and setting up different services there. It should always really be through infrastructure as the code. This is really industry standard, and Zappo follows that. So our infrastructure is really, everything is stored as a code in Terraform, and we evolve that. And if, let's say, something happens to one region or multiple regions, if needed, we are able to really take all of that and in fairly short amount of time redeploy everything in a different and totally different place. So this is for that disaster recovery scenarios, and again also to really make sure that it's clear. So you don't have to go into your AWS console to understand what is there. No, you can actually just look at the code and you will have the same insight, which makes the platform engineering team life much easier.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Kamel. Absolutely fascinating sort of learning and understanding how, say, for example, you're looking at the challenges that are being solved using Cassandra, MongoDB, infrastructure as code, the use of GCP, AWS, and then obviously, how you're structuring your teams using Teams Topology by Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pace, and then understanding a bit more about Expo Bank in terms of where you sit within that sort of crypto space and traditional banking space. And then obviously how you're using hardware wallets and digital wallets with regards to MPC, that's multi-party computation protocol versus multi-signature protocol. And obviously the regulatory requirements that's potentially affecting Xapo Bank with regards to being in the Bitcoin sector. And then obviously how you're sort of building your team and growing your team using AKRs and all the various other pieces that you shared with us, whether it be the challenge that you're facing, within that sort of tech space, i.e., how to get the balance right with regards to technology, people, process. So it's been absolutely fascinating learning more about you, learning more about Xapo Bank, and also learning about how you're using technology and building your teams to, in essence, provide a Bitcoin first organization, which is Xapo Bank. Can I please hand over to you, please, for the final words?
Yeah, it was really pleasure in talking to you, John. I do feel like it's important to be sharing things that Xapo Bank is doing. I feel that we've been off the radar for a while. The company is around for 11 years. We used to be a different type of business. We used to be in custody. Now we are Xapo. We became a bank focusing on retail customers, and we have an excellent product. I feel we are just now going out there again, investing a bit more funds as well into marketing, making sure we are in the right conferences, making sure we are supporting the Bitcoin community that we really want to invest in as well. So I feel like we are an excellent solution to problems, and I'm not saying we should ever replace hardware wallets or exchanges. That's not, of course, our goal. Everybody every product like that has its fits and purpose, but we do position ourselves where we felt there was a gap, right? Especially when it comes to mass adoption, and like I don't know, your mom, my mom would like to invest and make sure her retirement is a bit protected against inflation. Maybe it would be much easier for her to buy Bitcoin and just in a product that is easy to use versus trying to figure out how to operate with exchanges or trying to work with hardware wallets and making sure her keys are safe, right? So on that hand, of course, from the product perspective, I like to spread the knowledge, but I also feel like we are doing a lot of cool things when it comes to technology. So as a CTO, I always have bias towards that, and I'm passionate about technology, and I still like to be as hands-on as possible, even it's not always the easiest with at the upper management level. But I like to speak about that, and I like to share this because as always, we are usually every now and then we are open new roles, either creating new teams, or there is natural rotation. And then I want people to be able to hear that Zappo is a cool place to work, and we are doing cool stuff. So yeah, pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you, Camille. And we'll spread the word that Zappo is the bank to be at, and I'm sure you'll get that message across through your marketing and the various activities that you have in your whether it be marketing roadmap to assist you with that. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure once again, and we look forward to seeing Zappo Bank excel in the sector in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It was a pleasure.